Sausage Dogs, AKA, how are we pronouncing it?
Dachshund. Got Ralph 3 years ago. I'll be honest, wasn't my choice.
Easier to raise a human child or a sausage dog?
Very similar. It's like having a puppy. He needs to sleep, he needs to eat, he needs to get to the toilet. If he's not had those needs met, he's going to kick off.
The more Dachshunds they meet,
Yeah.
the less they want to work with them. So why Dovecotes? Why do we want to work with the sausage dog?
As soon as I got Ralph, everybody's like, you won't be able to toilet train him, you won't be able to leave him alone, he'll bark at everything, he'll chew everything, he'll go toilet everywhere, he'll hate kids. And I was like, nope, not having that.
Yep.
Not
I'll
having that.
show you. Even to this day, as a dog trainer, when I see a Dachshund not going fucking mental at everything, I'm impressed. What sort of things can we do with our Dachshunds to biologically fulfill them to make sure we're not creating that pressure cooker situation?
We've got to look at why Dachshunds bark and why they are so reactive. We've got to look at their history. So this is a dog that was bred to. A dog that isn't given outlets, the correct outlets, will then go and find its own outlets. And those outlets are very rarely what we want them to be.
I think a lot of Dachshund owners, and there may be some validity in this, are almost scaremongered into thinking their dog is so fragile and easily breakable.
Yeah. But any dog that goes into a dark hole and hunts a prey animal is not made of glass.
It's the dog I've been most bit by Head and Shoulders
Is it?
above
Yeah.
any other dog.
Hello. You might be wondering where Jacob is. Well, don't worry, he'll be back soon. But in the meantime, welcome back to another episode of Caffeine Canines. And this time we have Jack from Dovecote Dogs. And Jack and Jacob are talking about all things sausage dogs, why they're reactive, how to biologically fulfill your sausage, and much, much more. Enjoy.
Talk to us about Ralph.
Ralph, yeah.
Yeah.
So 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 now. Yeah, 3. Miniature, not from a big breeder or anything like that. It was literally just from somebody in Leicester that had pups.
Yeah. What
Um,
colour is he?
silvered apple.
Okay.
Yeah, silvered apple, but he's gone very dark. As he's got older, he's got darker. So he's still got some silver. When he was young, he's really silver, which they all are, really silver. But as he's got older, he's slowly got darker. But I think he's plateaued now, where he is now. But yeah, so got Ralph 3 years ago. I'll be honest, wasn't my choice.
Girlfriend's choice?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sausage dog wasn't. So her friend had one called Dave. And
It's a good name for a dog.
I know, solid name.
Human names for dogs are great.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
We've got a Kevin here. Fantastic name for a Staffy Cross Lab.
I like Kevin. What's your Stark?
Stark.
Yeah, I like that.
We've got a Ranger, Darla, and a Stark.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm a big Marvel
I like
fan,
that.
so...
Wait.
it was a Stark or Ren, if he was
Ren.
a girl.
I like Ren.
Like I wasn't
I
going to
like
know.
Ren for a daughter.
Yeah, it's a nice name, isn't it? You've just had a son, right?
Just had a son.
How's
Yeah,
that going?
Saxon, 6 weeks old.
Easier to raise a human child or a sausage
Very
dog?
similar.
Oh, yeah.
Very similar. There's so many things I'm like, oh, this is like, he needs to sleep. I'm like, it's like having a puppy. He needs to sleep. He needs to eat. He needs to get to the toilet. If he's not had those needs met, he's going to kick off. So having a kid and having a dog have been very similar. Very similar. But it's going well. It's going very well.
Nice.
Happy.
So most dog trainers I've met, worked with, mentored, shadowed,
Yeah.
the more sausage dogs they work with,
Yeah.
and sausage dogs, AKA, how are we pronouncing it?
Dachshund.
Dachshund. The more Dachshund, is Dachshund plural already, or?
No, Dachshund for singular and
Yeah.
Dachshunds.
Dachshunds is...
Dachshunds,
The
yeah.
more dog trainers I work with, speak to, mentor, the more Dachshunds they meet,
Yeah.
the less they want to work with them. So why Dovecotes? Why do we want to work with the sausage dog?
It wasn't planned. It wasn't something that I went out. So bouncing right back. So growing up, I grew up in a small village. Everybody shoots where I live. Like everybody shoots.
right, okay.
So we always grew up. The kids of the village were the beaters. We were always out beating. So it was spaniels, labs, all of those kind of working dogs. So we grown up. I say training. We were always out lamping and things like that. But when I say training, it wasn't pet dog training. It was very much training a dog to follow a light for lamping.
Gotcha.
Flushing, retrieving, things like that. And then grew up, got a little bit older, had to get a job like everybody does. And then 3 years ago, well, just over 3 years ago, we decided we were going to get a dog. And then 3 years ago, we got Ralph. And everybody said, and I was kind of like, I wasn't happy where I was at work anyway. So I'd had enough of my job, wanted something else. And at this time, I was still kind of training, but not training. I was going out beating still. And I'd go in like friends' dogs. I'd go and help out friends' dogs and things like that. Nothing serious, nothing paid, nothing like that. And then we got Ralph. as soon as I got Ralph, everybody's like, you won't be able to toilet train him. You won't be able to leave him alone. He'll bark at everything. He'll chew everything. He'll go toilet everywhere. He'll hate kids. And I was like, nope, not having that.
Yep.
Not
I'll
having that.
show you.
Yeah, that's not happening. And then that kind of like set off this little spark again to like, I'll do something with dogs just to get Ralph where I wanted Ralph to be, really. It wasn't about making a business. It wasn't about anything else. And then started training with Ralph. Did a few online courses over the course of like a year or two, which the online courses are good if you want to learn theoretical side, if you want to learn about cortisol and dopamine and things like that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Hands-on training. There is no hands-on training in an online course. So they were good. So I was going out trying things with Ralph. And then I was kind of like, okay, then we'll have a bit of a go. And I kind of just, for about the first 6 months, just did completely free sessions, didn't charge anybody for anything. I just wanted to use as many dogs as possible.
Nice.
So we're working with spaniels, boxers, anything I could get my hands on, cockapoos, loads of cockapoos, because again, they're a bit
Very
like
popular.
a Dachshund. Yeah, a bit like a Dachshund. So literally just working with as many dogs as possible. And then the more people saw me training with Ralph, I'd go to the local park and things like that. Leicester's got quite a big Dachshund community.
Is that where you're from? Sorry,
Yeah,
Leicester,
just outside Leicester, yeah.
Okay.
Got quite a big Dachshund community. People had seen, they were saying, oh, how are you doing that with your sausage? And it was kind of like, oh, okay. One thing led to another. Started posting on social media. And at the time, social media was just to post videos on. It wasn't to gain clients or anything like that. People started to see it. People started to see results. We started to see results. And then it just kind of snowballed from there, really. We started working with more and more Dachshunds.
Even to this day, as a dog trainer, when I see a Dachshund not going fucking mental at everything, I'm impressed. So to see one like yours healing and even coming back when they're cold.
Yeah. Ralph will, touch wood, Ralph will recall pretty much from anything. I say pretty much because I don't tempt fate. But he will recall from anything. He'll heal past everyone. He's completely neutral around other dogs, not interested really, which is what we wanted. I didn't want him to be... They fall into two categories. They're either over kind of boisterous in the dog's face, licking the other dog's mouth and going crazy, or they're completely terrified, barking, cowering, running away. Yeah. And I didn't want either of them for Ralph. I didn't want him to be overexcited or nervous. So we just completely worked on neutrality and neutrality.
So what advice do you have to Dachshund owners or dog owners? I'm not going to consistently pigeonhole you as a Dachshund trainer, because you're not just a Dachshund trainer. That's how you made your name, because you have a Dachshund. And I think there is somewhat of a Dachshund community out there that perhaps needs educating and have probably fallen into their own echo chamber of how they should be trained and trained, etc., which I think we'll come on to.
Yeah.
But what advice do you have for Dachshund or general dog owners to build that neutrality towards other dogs? Because like you said, falling into two categories: the hypersocial, overzealous dog, or the fearful dog that's perhaps defensive, wants to bark to send the other dog away. We can all benefit from having a more neutral dog. So what advice do you have to people that want to build that neutrality in their Dachshund or otherwise dog?
Yeah, so for me, it all starts when you get the pup. You get the pup most 8 weeks old, 10 weeks old, whatever age you get that pup. Those first few weeks of having that pup, what tends to happen, and this is no disrespect to anybody listening or anything like that, what tends to happen is people get this tiny little pup, they then hide them away from everything, and then they focus on training sit, and they focus on training down, and they focus on training whatever it may be, trick training, or they really want to get a loose lead walk, whatever it might be. And for me, that is just completely missing a huge that can come later on. That will happen when the dog's 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, whatever it might be. You can focus on the fancy stuff later on. For us, what we did with Ralph was those first probably 6 weeks was just literally getting out, seeing as many people, as many dogs, as many places as possible, rewarding, loads of play. Not enough people play with dogs outside. Everybody gets a puppy, plays with them inside, goes outside and ignores them, and then wonders why the dog comes home and goes mental and ignores you outside. So loads of play outside, loads of play. We're lucky enough to live in the country. There's loads of country parks around there, loads of dogs. And it was basically just loads of play. Play was the biggest thing for us, just in the presence of people, dogs, bikes, cars, whatever it might be, and just turning his focus internally to us.
Nice. I tell all my clients that any puppy I've ever raised, or any board and trained dog I've had, or my own dogs, I'd never play in the house. I want to create a zen, calm, low arousal environment in the house. And one of the questions that has been submitted to you, which we can touch on now you've mentioned it, is my dog will not play with me outside. Goes feral inside, I think was the words used, but won't play with me outside. So I guess you've kind of answered that in a roundabout way.
Yeah, that can be something. It depends on the age of the dog. That's something that's learned almost. It can just be learned that when I'm outside, I just go off and sniff and do my own thing. When I'm inside, the toys are everywhere. I've always got access to them. This is go time, basically. It's just can be a bit of a learned behaviour. I mean, there's obviously other factors that can play into it, and other kind of things that are happening in the dog's life or not happening in the dog's life. But for me, what I tend to see is there's a big gap there where people don't play with their dogs outside, or if they do, it's fetch. That's it, nothing else, just fetch. Which for a dog like the Dachshund, what I tend to see, some of them love playing fetch. The Dachshund spills over very quick, and playing fetch a lot of the time with Dachshund leads to kind of this obsessive behaviour over and over and over again. For me, the Dachshund is a breed of dog that doesn't want to play fetch all the time. They'd much rather, Ralph especially, and most of the dogs I work with would rather play tug. They'd rather chase something and bite something, tug it, snatch it from you, you snatch it from them. They'd rather dig, they'd rather sniff. Much rather do that than just repeatedly chasing a ball over and over again.
To go on from that, I'm massive in promoting biological and genetic fulfillment for dogs and making sure we're not creating any sort of pressure cooker situation. So things we look at when we're training a reactive dog is first and foremost build some sort of motivation that we can start teaching the dog with, even if we want to utilize that motivation to get the dog to start scatter feeding or whatever, right? If there's no motivation there and the dog doesn't have the desire or want, it's going to be really difficult to do anything, whether it's communicate with the dog, whether it's biologically fulfill the dog. So the question I'm going to pose to you is, what sort of things can we do with our Dachshunds to biologically fulfill them to make sure we're not creating that pressure cooker situation, that pressure cooker dog?
Yeah, so for me, one of the biggest things for the Dachshund scent work. So this is that they are a scent hound. They're the only scent hound that will hunt underground. All of the scent hounds hunt on top of ground. And touching on barking as well, if you want to touch on barking as well, is we've got to look at why Dachshunds bark and why they are so reactive. We've got to look at their history. So this is a dog that was bred to bark. Working underground, I don't know if you've ever seen a working Dachshund hunting rabbits or anything like that, but they'll go in and they'll bark pretty much all the way through.
Right, okay.
You can almost hear that bark. So if you're a hunter above ground, you can almost hear it. And you
can flush the animals out.
Yeah, and to alert the hunter where they are, where they're going, where the prey is. The hunter can almost hear them, follow them above ground. The hunter may have to dig them out, depending on where they are, what situation they're in. So all scent hounds bark, well, most hunting dogs bark when they're chasing prey. So they will do that. Like all hunting dogs, they were bred to fixate. They want to fixate, don't let the prey out of your sight, essentially. So you breed barking, you breed fixating, you breed reactivity, which is fine when you're hunting badgers in the 1800s, but when you're off to the pub for a carvery, it's not ideal. So we've got to look at what the Dachshund was bred for. Being a scent hound, for me, one of the best things I do, and I do this every day with Ralph, is scent work. And scent work, when you say scent work to a lot of people, it does sound confusing, sounds like, well, I don't know how to do that. Scent work can literally be hiding a toy in a house and making your dog go and find it. It could be scattering loads of treats in the garden, or you get your dog's kibble, throw it across the garden, make your dog find them. Getting there nose down and working will fulfill that dog, in my opinion, far more than chasing a tennis ball. When the dog's nose is on the floor, they'll breathe up to 200 breaths a minute. Compared to running around a field, they'll do up to 60. So they're working considerably harder. The brain is working harder. The dog's breathing in and out at the same time. So for people listening, the dogs have got two slits there, so they can breathe in and out at the same time. 12% of all air that's breathed in is going to the olfactory system, which means they have a constant flow of information flooding their brain to find that scent, basically. It's calming, relaxing, fulfilling. The dogs love it. I'm yet to meet a sausage that doesn't want to sniff, that doesn't want to find things on the floor. So for me, number one would be scent work. Number two would be tug. That kind of predatory motor pattern almost of chasing, biting, grabbing, shaking, killing is in the Dachshund. That's what it was bred to do. It's what it wants to do. So get out there, get yourself a good tug toy and play tug.
So all the things that you've mentioned so far in terms of what the Dachshund was created for, barking, fixating, chasing, and you said this relates to their reactivity. What are people doing with their Dachshund that creates a Dachshund that wants to express those desires towards other dogs?
I think it's more of a question of what are they not doing that makes them want to do that. So in my mind, and this is only in my mind, but it's probably in your mind as well, a dog that isn't given outlets, the correct outlets, will then go and find its own outlets. And those outlets are very rarely what we want them to be. So this dog doesn't get the opportunity to dig, to chase, to bite, to sniff, to do all of those things. Barking is so natural to the Dachshund that they then release this kind of pent-up frustration at everybody else and everything else. It can be a mixture of that. It can be a mixture of just guidance and rules, the dog not understanding rules and boundary, a lack of engagement. It can be past experiences, if the dog's had a bad experience with another dog. With the Dachshund being so small, a lot of them do have negative experiences with other dogs, and us as owners cause that a lot of times because we're quick to rush in and pick our dogs up and take them away from other dogs and kind of shield them from other dogs.
Kind of bubble wrap them a little bit.
Yeah,
right,
100%.
That critical learning
I think
period.
the Dachshund's probably one of the most bubble wrapped dogs out there. It's got to be one of the most bubble wrapped dogs out there. I mean, I'm guilty of it sometimes. I think every Dachshund owner is guilty of this at times.
I think a lot of Dachshund owners, and there may be some validity in this, are almost scaremongered into thinking their dog is so fragile and easily breakable.
Yeah, 100%.
So then immediately we forget to treat them like the dog that they ultimately are.
Yeah.
And some of which are working really fucking tough dogs as well.
100%.
Like working tackle are some of the fucking toughest
Yeah.
dogs. The breeder I got Stark from breeds tackle, and they had a dog imported from Serbia that kills badgers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We have to. There's a large genetic DNA crossover with this
Yeah.
and our Dachshunds that we're having in our living room. So
Yeah.
we have to remember they're not made of glass.
No, 100%.
And if we treat them as if they are, they'll quickly start believing
Yeah.
that they are.
Yeah, 100%.
And then grow up scared of the world,
Yeah.
right?
Being bred to hunt badgers, I mean, everybody's probably seen a badger at some point. A badger's big, fierce, nasty, will do a lot of damage.
Game as a badger.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Being bred to hunt something like that, I think says something about the breed. Okay, the miniatures came later and the miniatures were bred for hunting rabbits and things like that. But any dog that goes into a hole, a dark hole, and hunts a prey animal is not made of glass, is a strong dog. You look at things like terriers and things like that. They are strong, capable dogs. And they are bubble wrapped. And it's nobody's fault. It's one of those things. We get these dogs, we want to look after them, we want to care for them. But in doing so, we tend to cause a lot of issues. Now, I'm not saying that you should put your dog down and let everybody's German Shepherd and bully come along and roll it over and things like that. I'm not saying that. But that then, to me, falls on the other owner to be responsible with their dog as well. But socialising them with other dogs, yeah, 100%. Yeah, not wrapping them in bubble wrap, not being terrified that this is going to happen or that's going to happen. Because if you went through your life doing that, you never do anything.
You're correct. What about for the owners that, typical Dachshund, it's raining and they don't want to go outside for a pee? What are we saying to them? Are we getting the dog outside? Are we saying grow a fucking backbone? Or are we going to pick them up and let them piss in the house?
This is something I get asked quite a lot. He won't go out when it's raining. Now, the Dachshund isn't a water dog. We'll clarify that's not a poodle or something like that. We'll clarify that. However, that doesn't mean that we let them just crap in the living room when it's raining. I have done a couple of posts about this for me. So I'm lucky enough that opposite my house, there's literally the footpath is there straight away. So I know that Ralph very often won't want to go out into this. He won't toilet in the house, but he'll just hold it. So he won't toilet in the house, but if it's heavily raining, if it's spitting, he'll go out. So for me, I'm very much jacket goes on, lead goes on, and we go out. Like it or not, as harsh as that sounds, we go out. You go to the toilet, he does his business, we come back in again. 9 times out of 10, he'll go out and toilet straight away, because he's been holding it in, and because he knows that's what we do. He'll go out, go to the toilet, come back in. But for me, yeah, if your dog won't go out when it's raining, that's kind of on you to get your dog out when it's raining. Like the dog might not want to go out when it's raining. It's the same as having kids. Your kid might not want to do something, but that doesn't then mean my kid doesn't want to go to school. Well, you're still going to go to school. Like, that's inevitable. You're still going to go to school, and you'll enjoy it when you're there and it's done and it's over with.
I think the dirty word of compulsion, making a dog do something, has been tabooed so aggressively that we almost feel like we're not allowed to say to our dog, sorry, mate, but you have to do this. And then we end up creating dogs, Dachshunds or otherwise, that are just, anytime they're faced with something they have to do, maybe then get their nails cut or go to the groomers or go to the vets, they're then suddenly having a meltdown because through puppyhood, anytime they said, I don't really want to do this right now, okay, well, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And I don't think that sets a very good precedent for any dog.
Pressure is illegal in the dog training world, is how I like to think of it. Pressure is illegal. And when I say pressure, I don't mean like kicking the dog out of the house, but pressure in the sense of like, hey, no, hey, you want to do this. I know you want to do this. Like, you need to do this. We're going to do this. And then when it's done, it's done. There's a reward or whatever it may be. It turned into a positive. Pressure in the dog training world is frowned upon massively, but pressure in the human world is respected. And if someone's under a lot of pressure, it's respected and people appreciate that. But we don't cross that over into the dog world.
Yeah, and it's widely accepted that pressure creates mental durability.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and it's no different to that.
And success. Nobody who's successful has never had any pressure.
Yeah.
No dog that is successful in PSA with yourself, for example. No dog that is successful in PSA, I'm assuming, has never had any pressure.
And-
You want
and
to succeed.
Creating a good PSA dog from a puppy is all about getting them to tolerate pressure and cope with pressure and understand pressure and be able to turn it off and understand that it's going to come and then go, etc., etc. And PSA is just a very exaggerated example of real life.
Yeah.
Because the pressure comes along in real life, whether it's an off-lead dog or whether it's the weather or whether it's a truck that drives past that creates a little bit of pressure. It's inevitable. It comes, it goes.
Yeah.
You can deal with it.
Yeah, exactly,
right? And again, certain sports are just a very exaggerated example of that. And that's why I quite like sport, that it can teach me how to communicate better with dogs on a lower end, getting my dog okay with gunshots. It's the same process of getting the miniature Dachshund okay with the door slamming shut when someone comes into the house, right? Just desensitization and counter conditioning. So you're right in what you say there. What sort of things do you find yourself repeating to your clients on a day-to-day basis?
So there's a couple of things. Number one would be use the commands that you've trained. So what tends to happen a lot of the time with reactive dogs, with reactive Dachshunds, especially on this topic here, is the dog will start reacting and people send me videos. So the way that my coaching works, people send me videos of them out training and things like that. They'll be doing perfect training and then a trigger will appear and they go from kind of using commands that they know, like heel or look at me. It goes from that to, hey, Fido, come here, Fido, don't do that, this way. All of a sudden everything's gone out the window. And then the dog has no idea what you're saying. You just ramble in, you build in the anticipation, you're building the arousal because you're now flapping and panicking, and that just sets the dog off. So number one would be to use the commands that you've trained, and don't say anything else. I think we talk too much. I do. I'm always talking to Ralph like he's like an agony aunt. I'm always whispering in his ear. We talk too much as dog owners. The dog doesn't understand most of what we say. And the second thing is fulfillment. I find myself repeating that quite a lot, is fulfillment, making sure this dog's having their needs met over and over again.
People are so caught up on just walking their dog, right? And this is a conversation I have every single podcast, is people are just obsessed. They exercise the dog by walking it twice a day.
To the same park that the dog goes to every day.
I don't walk my dogs.
I
don't walk them on lead around the block.
Stark
has never, ever had an on-walk lead around the block. He's had plenty of off-walk leads where he's chasing squirrels and doing X, Y, and Z. And obviously we do lots of training for the sport in which we compete in. We do lots of food work. We do free shaping, etc., etc. Things that are constantly going to stimulate him, progressively overload his brain, fulfill him, and challenge him. I think making things hard for our dog is really important as well. Comes back to the pressure conversation. If our dog is just living in a realm in which everything is easy and they're repeating the same thing over and over again, obviously boredom's going to kick in and they're going to become self-employed, as we alluded to earlier,
100%.
right? So biological fulfillment, that's one I'm just constantly talking about. So there are a couple of messages. The question we get asked is, what should I do when the trigger appears? And I think the answer is exactly what you have been doing in the absence of the trigger.
Exactly that.
And if the dog's losing his shit, then it's either made it too hard or your communication's off, right?
Yeah, exactly that. That's and making it too hard is a big thing as well. There is a bit of an idea that I get asked quite a lot is, he's reactive to dogs, I need to go out and expose him to dogs, which then just rehearses the behaviour over and over and over again, increases the chances of that behaviour happening. And we need to work on that behaviour. We need to work on what we do want away from the trigger, and then slowly start implementing that in around the trigger, as opposed to just going out and going, there's 30 dogs, off we go. Sometimes
we can't avoid when the trigger pops up though, right? So whether it's the classic off-lead dog running over or something catches us off guard, what sort of advice do you give to your clients in terms of when they're ready to start exposing their dogs to the trigger? What sort of advice might you give your clients to make sure that the way I describe it is a little bit like, what's the time, Mr. Wolf?
Yeah.
You know, when you're trying to incrementally get closer and closer, but yet you get caught off guard, you have a really bad reaction, you kind of got to strip it back a little bit and then build back up, right? So what sort of advice do you have for owners that are ready? They've got a communication system built up. The dog understands what is needed of them in the absence of the trigger. We're ready to start exposure. What do you suggest to your clients do at that point?
Yes, so for me, if you have the ability to get a stooge dog, I would get a stooge dog. That makes life a lot easier. Not everybody has the opportunity for that. Although Facebook and things like that, Facebook groups make that far easier to link up with people and say, hey, we're going to go here. Chances are there's somebody out there who's got the same problem as you. Help each other out, things like that. Obviously, like you say, so I always say, avoid the rehearsal where possible. Isn't always possible. So we're ready to start exposing to triggers. For me, it's do it at a distance that the dog is capable of doing it, but don't get too caught up in. I think that's a very dangerous statement that gets thrown around, I think. So I do use that statement, but I think what happens then is people forever get stuck at this kind of 50-foot distance or whatever it is. So I think it's a bit of a dangerous statement. And referring again back to the pressure, we need to put that bit of pressure on. So for me, I'm a big fan of telling people to, hey, we'll start ready to expose. Let's go somewhere that's big and open, that we know there's going to be people, dogs, potential triggers. Let's go right over the corner. Let's just build some engagement first. And then I want you to walk forwards and backwards. And each time we go forwards, we're going to get incrementally closer and closer and closer and closer to that potential trigger. Don't get stuck at one end. Don't get stuck too close. Don't get stuck too far away. Make sure we're bouncing back and forth. I'm a big fan of, and I don't know about yourself, I'm a big fan of getting quite close to triggers and then pulling myself all the way back again and working back in again, pulling myself back again, working back in again. So for me, it's all about working with the dog in front of you. It's working with how this dog is reacting in this situation. If every time you take a step forward, this dog is losing his mind, there's work to be done elsewhere. There's work that needs to be done elsewhere. But if you're going forward and the dog is kind of interested, so I'm okay with a look. You can look at the trigger, but we're not fixating on that trigger. We're not going to observe that. If you find your dog is fixating on the trigger, we need to do something to break that, whether it be a small correction, whether it be a click and reward, whether it just be a hey with me, we turn around, we go the other way. And for me, it's working within that distance. So working in that distance, you've got your distance that your dog is comfortable, you've got your distance that your dog isn't comfortable. It's working within that. For the first, well, that would depend on the dog. It could be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That would depend on the dog. But making sure that you're keeping track of it and you're incrementally closing and closing and closing on that gap.
And when the dog tips over the edge, which sometimes is inevitable, unavoidable, because the off-lead dog runs over, what advice do you have for people that dogs had a bad reaction? What do we do? Yeah,
dogs had a bad reaction. Number one is forget about it. Don't dwell on it. Because that is far too easily done. That, it's not worked. The training's not worked. That's it. And then we go back to square one again. Don't do that. Just, hey, we've had a bad reaction. Create some more distance for me. So if I was on a field working with a dog and we've got a bit too close, the dog spilled over, for example, we've had an off-lead interaction, the dog spilled over, I would pull myself back out, I would do some play, I'd do some scatter feeding, maybe some scent work, I would do something that isn't focusing on the reactivity. I would then judge how the dog is, then would go again, and I'd judge how the dog is. If I think that they're just too full, I'd be like, okay, we're knocking on the head today. Don't be afraid to say, hey, that's enough today.
Day after back on the horse, or day after day off, or what are we saying?
I like to, if a dog's reached threshold, like properly reached their threshold, I'd have a day or two of just play at home, scent games, whatever it might be, just some training away from things. I like to have a day or two away from things. I think it's good for the human as much as it is for the dog, to kind of reset and then go again. Nice. What about yourself?
Depends on the dog. Some dogs can stack really easily, right? And they just seem in that like adrenalized state for prolonged periods of time. Some dogs recover. I don't know what I kind of find with Dachshunds, once they've had a reaction, the next dog is even more likely to be reacted to, and then it builds and builds and builds. So kind of...
they overflow fast. They do overflow very fast.
Yes, for sure. They're like a little adrenaline junkies,
with the Dachshunds as well, sorry to just jump in there. With the Dachshunds as well, there is for me, when we're stopping a reaction, especially from a Dachshund, because they overflow so quick, for me, when I'm stopping a reaction, I need to stop the reaction, which is probably the same for most dogs, before it happens, before that reaction happens. So every dog gives slight signals before they do anything. There's normally a pickup of a head, the ears move, whatever it might be. It's getting in there. Then, once they start to react, I tend to find with the Dachshund and most owners, once the dog's gone, that's it. That's it. Turn around, create more distance, reset, because you're not going to learn any. You're going to get peed off. The dog's going to get peed off. Just go away, basically. Start again.
I think while we're on threshold work, I think a true threshold or over threshold is when the dog can't turn off any form of operant conditioning, not just positive reinforcement. So traditionally, threshold work is where the dog stops taking food, and I don't think that's often the case, because sometimes you can introduce a little bit of negative reinforcement, then back to positive reinforcement, and the dog can come back around. And I think just lying in that one quadrant ends up, that's where you end up at that 50-yard threshold and not being able to cross the line. I think when the dog is not able to turn off the pressure that they know how to turn off in the absence of the triggers, and they're still reacting, I think that's our true threshold. And I think 80, 85, 90% of our work should be that engage, disengage type, that sort of training, which we all do as trainers, balanced or otherwise, or we should be doing. Making sure that dog's coming out of that potential reaction with the clicker, with our marker, whatever it may be, But I think we should then still be empowered to say, hey, that's not quite right, bring our dog back through. And then if we're applying our pressure and the dog's like, fuck that, I'm gonna go at this dog, then I think that's truly over
that's
threshold. So I think that's worth just talking about, because of, I think the threshold word is often misunderstood
a lot of the time. I think there's a lot of things in dog training that are misunderstood. So for me as well, just because you mentioned it then, balanced, so a lot of people probably don't know anything about my methods, balanced or force free, in the sense I've never called myself a force free trainer. I've never called myself a balanced trainer. Purposely, I call myself a dog trainer, and I will come and sit with people like yourself who I think are genuinely very good balanced trainers, and I will then quite happily get in the car on the way home, put Susan Garrett's podcast on, and listen to the other side. I've never wanted to fall into a category. The only issue I think with balanced, and not with the balanced methods as such, is I think there's so many trainers out there who call themselves balanced, who then send a bad image because they're more on the compulsion side, and they then send a bad image for genuinely balanced trainers like yourself. So part of the reason why I follow yourself, part of the reason why I've come up here is because I've watched your stuff. I've been up here for your seminar kind of thing. Love the way you train, like the way you train. I think you're one of the few genuinely balanced trainers out here, and that sounds a little bit like we're just sucking you off a bit because we're on camera. It is a sausage podcast. But I think that's true, because then force free as well. I see so many people come to me. I've been to 4 different trainers, and this behaviour is still happening. It's like, well, what did you do? Well, every time you've seen a dog, I threw some food on the floor. It's like, well, that's why you're still having the same issue. Because you're just repeating the same thing over and over and over again.
And potentially just diverting the dog from the issue at hand.
We're not addressing the actual problem. So for me, I've been very cautious of not saying I'm force free and not saying that I am balanced.
I typically avoid the terms because of balance. For something to be balanced, there needs to be 50-50, right?
Yeah.
For me, when we're changing behaviour, especially if it's fear-based or otherwise, and the dog's in a defensive state, and they genuinely think in that moment their harm is coming their way, I think 85 to 90% of the work needs to be a counter conditioning protocol with something the dog likes. And then I think our aversion should be when the dog... if we make a mistake as the handler, or the environment doesn't play in our hand, we should be able to utilize a little bit of pressure to make sure our dog doesn't find success in the unwanted behavior we're trying to get rid of. If we looked at that on a scales, it would not be balanced, right? It'd be heavily tipped to the other side.
80-20
and I don't think anyone can call themselves a force-free trainer, because I don't think there's any such thing as the true absence of force, right? Whether it's just like picking a dog up by the belly, putting them into the back of the car. That's force.
That's forcefully done,
Putting a dog on a lead and a harness, that's force. Keeping your dog inside your house, that is force. If you want to say you're a force-free trainer, open your front door and let's see what happens. Okay, so there's always going to be force there to a degree. And I think when people hear force, they think shooing a dog in or blasting them.
People assume the worst, 100% all the time. People assume, like for me as well. So I would be, in the eyes of the force-free community, I'd be considered a balanced trainer.
Oh, you're a piece of shit to them, mate.
100%. Because I would verbally correct a dog. So for me, I'm kind of always, most dog trainers are, I think, that is a noise, I think, that comes naturally to dog trainers, is that noise. The way I see it is 99.9% of people are already shouting at their dog. When they've got a problem, they're already shouting at the dog. They're already saying no. But that is confusing the dog. So by adding in a very, very clear-cut, fair correction, that to me is fairer on the dog than just shouting whatever people are already shouting at the dog.
Consequence should be emotionless. It should be strategic. It should be well thought out. It shouldn't be a reaction through frustration from the owner, because that's where you are going to damage your relationship, where you've been nicey, treat, will you fucking stop it? And then suddenly your dog thinks you're bipolar. Whereas for my dogs, there's a clear-cut set of rules. They do something I want. Hey, no.
100%.
Right, knock it off. And they're like, okay, this has always been the rules. It will always be the rules. And I understand when Dad's not too happy with me, or I've not got something quite right. And I think that's way fairer than pushing a human to their emotional threshold to the point where they lose their shit at their dog and then do some irreparable damage to their relationship with their dog by like throwing something or like crashing something, or like even worse, like giving the dog a bit of a shoeing because they're so pissed off, right? That's not fair on a dog. And you're right, people are doing that on a day-to-day basis, like losing their shit with their dog because of, you take out your sausage dog 50 times and it's kicking off at fucking 100 dogs or whatever.
Stressful.
Of course.
How many people have chucked their dog in another room and slammed the door for no reason? Like, well, I say
in
for
the
no
dog's
reason,
head,
but...
perhaps no reason.
Yeah, exactly.
For us, a reason, but the dog's probably done something that they've done 100 times. We've suddenly lost our shit. And then done something that the dog's like, What the
It's
fuck
just
has just happened?
For me, there's so many things out there that are considered force-free almost and positive that are very confusing, and to me they're almost psychologically damaging. It's almost a psychological punishment as opposed to a physical punishment. There was, I won't say any names, but there was a course I was doing, there was a well-known dog trainer on there, and she was talking about her dog. She'd got however many dogs, and if one of her dogs was playing up before they went out for a walk, just overexcited, perhaps had whatever, an excited day, wants to go out for a walk, then she would take all of the other dogs and would leave that one dog behind, scratching at the door kind of thing. Now, to me, that's just, rather than just being like a little bit of pressure, sit, put them in a sit, put leads on or whatever else you need to do, to me, that's almost psychologically damaging. That's completely unfair on the dog.
So when I'm training for PSA and my dog isn't concentrating, the absolute worst consequence I could give him would be to pick him up, and I do this, put him in the van. As I put him in the van, I look at him with a look of disappointment and then close the van. The next time he comes out, he's fucking perfect.
Yeah.
Because if dogs are social animals, they want to be with you.
Yeah.
Isolating them is a massively, I think, is sometimes underused, sometimes overused. But what we do forget is psychologically that can be way more punishing than a tap on the e-collar.
Yeah, 100%.
I can guarantee, in my dog's mind, he would rather take a tap on the e-collar for not going into the down quick enough than he would being picked up and put in the van.
Yeah.
But one is considered negative reinforcement, positive punishment, crossover, and then one is considered a timeout, which is utilised in certain communities that may say that they are force-free or...
Yeah, 100%. So, and like for me, like, I don't use e-collars and I don't use prongs. Now, the reason I don't use e-collars, I don't use prongs, is just mostly because I haven't had a need to.
Yep.
Secondly, with the e-collar is I never use the e-collar, so I wouldn't feel qualified to use the e-collar, if that made sense. And then with prongs, most of the time working with a 5 kilo Dachshund, I've no need to put that Dachshund on a prong or anything. If I was working with 45 kilo XL bullies that's dragging Barbara down the road,
maybe
that's a different situation. Maybe slip leads I have used on Ralph. Don't use that often. Don't use very often. Would use if needed using, or if a client shows up with slip leads or whatever it may be, I would use. For me, I use a lot of verbal corrections, things like that, body positioning, things like that. But the reason I talk about the balanced and the force-free is that the Dachshund world is very, very positive, which is a great thing in my mind if we can do things as positively as possible. But you need to be open. If you really want to solve these behaviours and these problems, you need to be open to experiencing and trialing and using different methods, in my opinion. If you want to be A, a good dog trainer, and B, if you want the best for your dog, you've got to be open to it. So the reason I talk about balanced and positive is the Dachshund world is very, very positive. A lot of that leads to the backs. A lot of that comes from back problems. Is people have this this kind of idea of what will cause problems with a Dachshund's back. And I know this is something that we wanted to touch on. So if you want me to carry on, go on.
Keep going, yeah.
So with the Dachshund's back, IVDD, so intervertebral disc disease, is 1 in 4 Dachshunds will get IVDD. It's quite common. It's very common, yeah. And the general consensus is don't let them go up and down stairs.
Yeah.
Don't let them jump on and off of sofas. Don't walk them on a collar. Don't walk them on anything like a slip lead or anything like that. Only walk them on a harness. Now, the studies say slightly different. For me, the problem comes with Dachshunds is jumping on and off sofas with their backs, for example. The problem comes with the vast majority of Dachshunds are overweight. That is where the issue comes from. If you've got a fit, healthy Dachshund, then jumping on and off the sofa probably won't have any effect. And this is what at Cambridge University are doing a study at the moment, and have been doing a study where they're kind of looking at this, and they're not seeing the correlation of jumping on and off sofas and doing stairs and IVDD. A lot of it's genetics, so a lot of it's passed down, and a lot of sausages are overweight. A 5 kilo sausage that's 1 kilo overweight, that's a fifth of his weight. I'm 15 stone. That's like me being 18 stone.
Yeah.
So it's a huge amount of weight. So if that dog is then jumping on and off the sofa, that causes a lot of back problems, or can cause a lot of back problems.
Significantly more pressure on the joint.
A huge amount of pressure, yeah. And IVDD is one of those things that isn't always fixable. It's very expensive if it is fixable. The scans alone will set you back £6,000-7,000 just for scans, and then surgery is more.
So you suggested that there's a large genetic component to that. Is there anything that people can do to avoid it? Is it something avoidable? I know nothing about it.
So yes and no. Yes and no. So the same as like, so you'll have a PRA check as well. So for their eyes, Dachshunds can be prone to getting PRA, which is a problem with their eyes as they get older. You can have that checked. So if you're buying a Dachshund puppy, make sure it's PRA clear, which basically means that mum and dad are both haven't got that gene. When it comes to IVDD, because there's so much kind of, is it all genetics or is it some kind of lifestyle? There's a mix of opinions. So for me, I would be wanting to make sure that mum and dad both haven't had IVDD, haven't got any back problems, no curvatures of the spine or anything like that. And then if you can look further back than that, I would be wanting to look further back than that and see where, if there is any results of IVDD in kind of the family history, as far back as you can look. And then, to be honest with you, it's a little bit like buying a used car. It's a look of the draw.
Oh, really?
It can be, yeah. There's people out there who have perfectly fit, healthy Dachshunds who never jump on sofas or anything, get IVDD. And then there's sausages that are 4 or 5 kilo overweight, jump off of everything and never get IVDD. It's a difficult one. It is a very difficult one. And it's a medical topic. It's not something I'd advise everyone, if you've got any concerns, speak to a vet. Obviously, it's a medical topic. It's not something I'm clued up on. It's just something I observe working with Dachshunds over and over again.
Perhaps a controversial question. Are there any colours of Dachshunds that we should maybe avoid?
Yeah, so avoid is like, if the dog's already been bred, in my opinion, that and is maybe in a rescue or something like that, I don't avoid them because of that. The dog needs rescuing, things like that. I hope the dog's out. White Dachshunds.
Never seen one.
They're normally what's called double dapple.
Gotcha. Okay. I have seen one.
So shouldn't breed dapple with dapple. Can cause a lot of skin diseases, can cause PRA, can cause a lot of other things. You can get blue Dachshunds as well, and again, generally get a lot of skin conditions, a lot of rashes, dimples, things like that. The main colours really, the main colours really, I say that, but it's like every dog, they all get merged in with one. But you've got chocolate dapple, silver dapple, black and tan, black, and then you've got your teckles and your wire heads are slightly browny coloured and whatever else. But the vast majority of what you'll see people have is chocolate and tan, just general black. You can just get solid black, silver dapple or chocolate dapple. White and blue are the two main colours that I personally would avoid in the sense of breeding, if I was breeding them. If it was a rescue situation, I'm all for rescuing as many dogs as you can. Getting dogs out of shelters is always a good thing, especially small Dachshunds.
Yeah. Do you see many in shelters?
Yeah, you do.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
You see a few, normally in pairs.
Okay.
You see quite a few of them in pairs. So near me, East Midlands Dog Rescue, aren't too far from me. They've normally got at least one in at any time, normally 2 or 3. Yeah, you do see them. Surrendered for, I suppose, a variety of reasons. Some are surrendered from elderly people.
Okay.
Some are surrendered because people just can't cope with them.
Underestimating them a little bit.
I think they're massively underestimated. I think people see them as cute and cuddly.
Drive, they're tenacious little things, right?
Huge amount of drive, yeah. And then they're massively underestimated. People see them as these small, cute, cuddly Dachshunds, and that isn't that dog. That isn't that dog. This dog wants to go out and chase and sniff and bite and do all of these things.
It's the dog I've been most bit by Head and Shoulders above any other dog.
Yeah, there we go. That
with
says,
ease.
And that says one thing. Very snappy.
Yeah, quick, prone to use their mouth, right?
Very.
And they're so quick,
they can't use
amazing
their legs.
reflexes. Yeah, exactly
Too
right.
small.
Right, so you have some questions from our audience.
Yeah.
From ours and your audience, so I'll just go through a few of these. I think you already take a guess at what most things are going to be asked, though. So.
Barking.
Yeah. Where are we? Okay. Help, I can't leave mine in the house and go out.
Yeah, so separation's a big thing. With separation's a big thing, I think, in the whole dog world. It's not just the thing why separation gets blown up so much, I think, anyway, is because it's debilitating. Like, you've got to go to work, you've got to go shopping, you've got to do these things. Things like loose lead walking you can live with. So for me, it'd be a case of, where are you leaving the dog to start with? Let's draw things out. Where's the dog being left? And then kind of like, okay, are they in a crate? Are they in the kitchen? Do they have free roam? Is it a case of they're stressing because they're in their crate and the dog's not got this good association with the crate, or are they stressing because they've perhaps got too much free roam and maybe they're not got separation anxiety, maybe they're noise reactive, and the stress is coming from the fact that they're sitting in the window watching Brian walk his boxer past, or whatever it might be. So for me, it'd be drilling down on that first, and then it would be, okay, it's separation. It'd be about desensitizing my leaving cues to start with, making sure this dog is happy. So it'd be about getting distance first. making sure that my dog is happy kind of in the kitchen on his own while I'm in the living room. If I find that the dog is following me everywhere, that'd be the first step, is to make sure my dog is comfortable on their own in the living room, in their bed, maybe their crates in there, they're happy in there while I'm in another room. And then I would slowly start desensitizing leaving cues, and I would gradually increase the time that I leave that dog for. I think a big mistake that we make a lot of the time, and a lot of the time it's through necessity, is we get them and then we go, right, okay, see you later, mate, I'm off to work. And then we're gone for 4 hours. That stressful situation is then remembered by the dog, and can cause a lot of issues. So small repetitions multiple times a day.
And it's obviously then reinforced by the pressure they feel for 4 hours is then relieved by you coming back, and then
exactly,
oh, great.
This is amazing. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So for me, it's a lot of repetitions of out and in, out and in, out and in, and slowly building up that time. I'm not a separation specialist. Do work with separation cases, but severe separation anxiety I would normally pass on. And I think that's a big thing in the dog training world, is to admit that you're not an expert in everything. There's a lot of dog trainers out there who will think they are an expert on everything.
Yeah.
And then when you actually watch them work and watch whatever else, you think, actually, I don't think you're an expert in anything.
Yeah. What's it called? The Dunning-Kruger effect? Is that right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. We'll go with that.
Yeah. There's lots of that. I was thinking about that last night, actually. There's plenty of them. Will my weenie ever be fully potty trained?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, how do I do it?
Of course, yeah. So, for me, no puppy pads. For me, routine. So, I always advise clients, take them out to the toilet every 2 hours. Every 2 hours, take them out to the toilet. After food, after play, after sleep. As soon as you wake up, take them out. Before you go to bed, take them out. And it's all about us as owners putting the effort in and going out with them, making sure they're actually going to the toilet. The amount of times I've spoke to somebody and they've said, he keeps weeing at night, like he keeps weeing. And I'm just like, well, does he go to the toilet before he goes to bed? And they say, yeah, I kick him out. Yeah, but that wasn't the question. Does he go to the toilet before he goes to bed? Oh, I don't know. Yeah. And then half the time the dog's going out sniffing around the garden but not going to the toilet. So that was where the issue is. So for me, it's all about routine. Every couple of hours, get them out to the toilet. A big thing is rewarding them, obviously, for toileting in the garden, but making sure the dog is finished before you celebrate and reward. A lot of people will celebrate too early. The dog stops halfway through, comes in and finishes. Yeah. So for me, routine.
What if the dog doesn't go outside?
Take them outside. Pick them up, put the lead on, whatever it needs to be.
Or going outside.
And make the outside. If your dog is not going outside, let's make the outside fun. Let's play outside. Let's take whatever we need to outside to start making it fun.
Where is my dog's off switch? So I guess how do we teach our Dachshunds to calm down?
To switch off? Yeah. This is a big one, and this will relate into a lot of the barking and things like that. So a lot of the barking at home is all, a lot of it is all linked together. And for me, a lot of the time, a dog that doesn't switch off is a result of a couple of things. Number one, it's a result of lifestyle. So is this dog sleeping enough? Is this dog on a good diet? Are they getting enough exercise? Are they getting enough breed-specific fulfillment? Are they getting enough opportunities to do what that dog wants to do? And then number two, what tends to happen is we want the dog to be calm, and this tends to happen a lot. Social media, I think, makes this worse, is, I want my dog to be calm, licky mat. I want my dog to be calm, stuff Kong. I want my dog to be calm, scatter feeding. Your dog will never switch off because you're always switching him on. Like, you're always switching that dog on. So for me, I have, with my clients, I call it pockets. So I have pockets throughout the day where we do exercise, stimulation, and whatever else. Yeah. After that, nothing. Essentially, we're going to start drilling that dog down, teaching that dog to switch off. Yep. It's all about being consistent is the biggest thing. All about being consistent. Don't give in. So I don't know your opinion on this. I got a bit of hate on social media for this, but I take Ralph's toys off. Ralph doesn't have free access to toys at all. He will have toys when we are playing and doing a session. I will then take the toys away. The toys are temptation, they're arousal, they're all kinds of things. So he doesn't get free access to them. He doesn't need free access to them. I've got some hate on social media for that.
I think it kind of defeats the purpose of a toy, right? What's the toy there for? The toy is to represent prey. Yeah. Prey doesn't just linger around and stay there all day. The dog's going to very quickly get bored of, when have they ever seen a rabbit just stood there, like, doing nothing, right? So the whole reason we play with our dogs is to, like, fulfill their prey drive, to let them practice in a controlled fashion, them chasing and killing something. Yeah. So by leaving toys out, all we're going to really teach our dogs to do is how to be destructive, because ultimately they're just going to get to the point where they destroy them, right? Yeah. So we then waste money on toys. Yeah. The dog then that toy then loses its value as prey.
Yeah.
And then we kind of desensitize the toy to our dogs and defeat the whole purpose. And we take the dog outside and we throw a ball and they're like, no, I've just like, there's like 50 inside I could play with if I wanted to, right? So no, I don't think there's any problem with that. And like you touched on earlier, I always say that you can't teach inactivity with activity.
Yeah.
So if you want your dog to be inactive, where they're going to have to do nothing through certain pockets of the day, as you explained, we don't do that by giving them something to do.
Yeah.
If your child is being a massive dickhead and you go and give them an iPad,
Yeah.
what are they going to do next time? They're going to be a dickhead
Exactly
again,
that,
right?
yeah.
And when they're on the iPad, they're not doing nothing. Sometimes we have to keep still. Sometimes we all have to go to work and sometimes do nothing and sit down and, you know, for a prolonged period of time.
Exactly that. And it's, for me, it's a lot of the times, because a lot of people are working from home now as well, and a lot of questions I get is demand barking. So people are working from home, the dog's sat at the side of them, barking at them, whatever else. And for me, it's a case of, well, let's tick all his boxes. Let's make sure he's getting all of his boxes ticked. That's the first thing. And then, well, let's move his bed. Let's put him away. Let's put him, if he's got a crate in the living room, or put him in the living room, or whatever it might be. You've got to work. And the more consistent we can be with that, the more he'll start to realise, oh, actually, okay, yeah, I'll just chill. Mum will come get me later, or Dad will come get me later.
I think a lot of people reactively meet their dog's needs instead of proactively. So they give the dog nothing to do. They allow the dog to do nothing for 2, 3, 4 hours. The dog then figures out, I need to do something. How can I manipulate my human to get that something out of them? That's usually demand barking because it's annoying for us. We then meet our dog's needs by feeding them, playing with them, walking them, and then all our dog learns is they can operantly control us to get them to do that. So if we proactively meet their needs, right, all these boxes are ticked, like you said, now we're going to do nothing. And then before you get bored again, I'm going to make another effort to proactively meet your needs. So our dog never learns how to control us by barking, digging, scratching, pissing up the side or whatever that gets us off our arse to go and then do something with our dog.
100%.
And I think that was a real big one over lockdown as well, because we were just sat around with the dog all day, right? And the dogs quickly learned how to train us as humans.
Yeah, very quick.
And then this plethora of behavioural issues come along with that. And I guess that people working from home are still experiencing that, right?
100%. For me, it's one repetition. One repetition of that behaviour, dogs very quickly, boom, okay.
Yeah, I bark once, I get a 3-hour fucking walk. Oh, brilliant.
I've basically got mum and dad on cue. This is amazing. And that is what they do a lot of the time. So, and it's also, you said boredom there as well. I'm not bad mouth. My clients are amazing, not bad mouthing clients, but I had a funny story with the client, to be fair. And it was a bit of a situation where she was working from home. The dog was very barky.
Yep.
And eventually we got him anyway. Got him to the point where he was settled and he was sleeping on the sofa. She was working, sleeping on the sofa.
Yeah.
I then got a message from her saying he looked bored. I gave him a licky mat.
Because he was chilling out?
Because he was chilling out. And
I've had people think because their dog is chilling out and is calm and is sleeping more, that the dog's got depression.
Yeah.
No, your dog's been a normal dog now.
That's
right? Before he was a hyperactive arsehole. Now he's being a normal dog.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, I think he's depressed because he's not barking out the window, going crazy at everyone going past. No, Lisa, that's not how it works.
No, exactly. It was exactly that. And I was trying to explain to her that, no, if he was bored, he'd be barking at you. He'd be doing something if he was bored.
Yeah.
That's what we were aiming for. We've now got it.
Yeah.
You're now reversing it.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, we've there was a 500 questions on dog reactivity as well.
I can imagine, yeah.
But we've kind of been through how this dog ends up reactive, and for the most part, there's a genetic disposition there because they're reactive in their work role, right? And if we're not giving them any sort of direction in fulfilling that, then perhaps they're going to become that self-employed, as we alluded
100%.
to earlier. I think that's a good starting block before we start punishing the dog into stopping their reactivity.
Yeah. So for me, I always go through a bit of a system before I tackle, say it's reactivity on lead, for example. Before I even touch on and focus on the reactivity, that probably 2, 3, 4 weeks before that, we're meeting all of the dog's needs. We're making sure we've got communication channels. We're probably working on loosely walking, building some engagement on the lead before we even look at the reactivity, before we even focus on that. Because what you'll find is if your dog's at 100% here, we do all of that work and we tackle all of those things. Although it's not actually tackling specifically the reactivity, you'll get to tackle the reactivity and your dog will be at 50%.
Yeah.
Far easier to work with, gives you room to work. So for me, the reactivity, although we do tackle the reactivity, and for me with corrections as well, talking about corrections, is ethically, I suppose you'd call it, morally, I won't correct a dog until I know, okay, we've done this, and this. Then now I'm just looking at its behaviour as a behaviour. I know it's not nerves because we've done this work. I know it's not missing this, that, or the other. I'm now just seeing this now as a behaviour, and we can tackle it as a behaviour as such. I don't know if you're probably the same as that. Yeah,
for sure. Unless there's danger.
Yeah, yeah.
So
of course,
if
yeah.
I'm going to get hurt,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
person's
yeah.
going to get hurt, another dog's going to get hurt, or the dog's going to hurt themselves.
Yeah.
So we had a dog recently that was chasing its own tail to the point it was really hurting itself.
Okay, yeah.
So the e-collar goes on, and
Yeah,
it's now
100%.
really uncomfortable to chase your tail.
Yeah, so for me as well, just touching on that as well, if I get a client who messaged me with a resource guarding dog, a reactive dog, whatever it might be in the house, maybe a bit of an aggressive dog, and there are children present, kids present, for me, then I will skip a few steps and I'll say, look, we need some not harsh boundaries, but we need some straight boundaries straight
Sooner
away,
rather than
immediately.
later,
As soon as
right?
kids are involved, I think we need to do something.
Because
to
there's a
prevent
dog
that
bites the kid,
happening.
and then obviously the kid's hurt, and the dog's either rehomed or put down.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
You're not helping anyone out by like waiting 6 weeks before doing
Yeah,
something
exactly,
about
yeah,
it, right?
no.
Did you say you had any questions for me?
Yeah, so number one is social media. How do you find social media?
I think as soon as you start giving a fuck what people think,
Yeah.
you'll do really well.
Yeah,
You have to remember you're not going to please everyone. Pissing people off is often going to play in your favour.
yep,
If you sit on the fence, you're not going to get anywhere.
yeah,
So stand up for what you believe in,
Yeah.
and go for it.
yeah, I like that.
We talked about earlier, if you can give anyone something that they can correct you on, one, it'll make you laugh, and two, it'll boost your engagement.
Yes.
But social media is a very dangerous place. A
Yeah.
lot of echo chambers are created. Breed specific Facebook groups are just the worst place on planet Earth.
So there's a few in particular that I try and post on Facebook groups, and no promoting, none of this. And there's one that's like there's one that's called Positively Trained Dachshunds.
Yeah.
It's got, I can't remember how many thousand members it's got. But dog trainers aren't allowed to post, which means that, no offense to everyday owners and Joe Blogs, they're allowed to comment on training and give advice,
Crazy.
but actual trainers can't.
People that has got one dog that's probably still reactive.
Yeah.
And something that also really annoys me on social media is people with dogs that have severe behavioural issues
Yeah.
that are spouting off dog training advice
Yeah.
when their platform has come from them having a dog
Yeah.
that has severe behavioural issues. That's like me being a mechanic and my car is completely fucked, and I post every day about how to fix a car,
Yeah.
yet I'm sat there broken down on the side of the road.
Yeah, 100%.
What?
100%. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
What?
Facebook groups are, well, I don't really go in them much, to be honest with you. Not now anyway, not because I can't post in them.
Yeah.
Just can't plug anything in them, so I don't really go in them.
I don't
TikTok's Instagram, to be fair,
TikTok's
Instagram's
fucking
pretty good.
savage.
TikTok is savage.
People
That's where the
hide
hate
behind
comes
fake
from.
accounts and
Yeah.
all sorts. and
User
it's younger
757.
Yeah. You piece of shit.
Yeah.
Fuck you. You use this collar on this dog and you walk your sausage dog on a collar and
Yeah.
you're going to hell, bitch.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Thanks,
that was
mate.
actually, touching on that, walking on the collar, that was actually another question for yourself. So I put a story out on Instagram the other day about slip leads. So there's a big thing in the Dachshund world where they have to be walked on a harness. And they have to be walked on a harness because of their backs.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to educate people, I suppose, is that for me, what I see, 99% of store-bought harnesses do not fit the Dachshund properly.
Yeah.
Their body shape doesn't fit. They rub under their armpits. I
Yeah.
know every single one we've ever had for Ralph is rubbed.
Yeah.
And then what they do is they sit, because of their chest, they sit up here, they sit on the throat, which then means when your dog pulls, it pulls here.
Yeah.
And they're just, for me, they're just not good. Most store-bought harnesses, you can get custom fit harness. We've got a custom fit harness for Ralph,
Yeah.
which they're good. The custom fit, they're made to fit, obviously. But Ralph is on a harness 99.9%, a collar, sorry, 99.9% of the time. For me, this is what I try and educate people. The issue isn't the collar or the slip lead. The issue is the fact that your dog's pulling.
Yep.
The issue isn't what he's walking on, because Ralph, for example, you could walk Ralph on a shoelace, it'd make no difference because he's walking next to me. So with the slip lead, a lot of the comments I got back from slip lead was a mixed bag. Some people use them, some people don't use them. I think a lot of people are scared by them because they slip. I think people think of a noose, and used correctly, I know, and you'll know, it isn't that. Especially with a small 5 kilo dog like like Ralph, for example, a 5 kilo dog like a Dachshund, it's the corrections on a slip lead for me. It's finger and thumb. It's such a small amount of pressure.
So what people forget to remember is pressure is accumulative, meaning that the pressure we administer over a prolonged period of time can accumulatively be greater than the greater amount of pressure used over an acute amount of time. So, for example, I would much rather stub my toe and then enjoy the rest of my year than suffer with a chronic depression for the rest of the year. Chinese water torture involves a drip of water over your head for a 24-hour period which is much more aversive than probably getting shot.
Yeah.
So these are obviously exaggerated examples, but if you walk a dog on a harness for 2 years,
Yeah.
that pressure is 10 times the amount,
Yeah.
if not 100 times the amount, than if you had addressed your dog's lead pulling
Yeah.
on a slip lead
Yeah.
over a 15-minute period.
Yeah, exactly that.
I have met dogs, one spaniel in particular, that pulled so bad on a harness that when he was then taught to walk nice on a lead next to the owner, his gait of walking was
Yeah.
so damaged from the muscle memory of walking on a harness and
Yeah.
pulling like a train that he needed surgery in his elbows,
Yeah.
his front 2 elbows. That's pressure. That's aversive to the dog. That's a negative for the dog, right? So when we use tools that administer a higher intensity level of pressure over an acute period of time, what we can often weigh up is that it's a lesser evil
Yeah.
than a smaller amount of pressure administered over a prolonged period of time,
Yeah.
which again equates to a greater amount of pressure overall.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That was good. Yeah, that
So,
was good.
yeah, and I think that's why a lot of arguments for tools come in, because of there's always going to be some sort of pressure involved, like
Yeah.
we spoke about
Yeah.
earlier, right? So it's about weighing up the dog's welfare over a year's period, not over a 15-minute session period.
100%. And I think this is partly why I want to speak to you about it, because I am not, you have far more experience in this area than I do. And this is partly why I want to speak about it, because I know that my followers in particular will find this very useful with the Dachshunds. Is a lot of people are scared of them because they say that they can be misused. And my argument to that is the same as your argument, the same as a lot of pet trainers' arguments, is anything could be misused. So
Yes.
a harness, for example, like I've said before, that harness that's rubbing on your dog's arms there, like that is so sore and painful.
Taking away all the fur and creating like these
and will
red
take
sores.
weeks and will take weeks to heal. And pulling on their kind of, they tend to sit, the harnesses tend to sit on the chest, not where a collar would sit.
Yeah.
Really kind of where the fleshy bit is there, where the airways really are, and a lot of them are pulling on that. So for me, part of the reason why I wanted to bring this up is not to tell everybody to just go out and buy a slip lead and do that, but is to kind of understand that it's not the slip lead that's aversive, it's not the collar that's aversive, it's the way it's being used, but it's the fact that the dog is pulling. That's the issue. It's not the fact that it's being walked on a collar or a harness, because I get messages on Instagram and comments about Ralph being walked on a collar all of the time. Ralph's always been on a collar, and coming from kind of where we grew up, everybody shot. Everybody was on slip leads. Every dog was on slip leads. Like that was growing up as a kid, going beating. Like I didn't know of any other lead. That was a dog lead. That was it, kind of thing. And I always think those dogs lived very good, happy, fulfilled lives. Loved working, loved going out.
Of course.
So for me, that's part of the reason why I wanted to bring it up, is just to try and kind of get rid of a few taboos and a few myths around the fact that everybody thinks it's going to put so much pressure on the dog's back, ignoring the fact that your harness is putting pressure on your dog's back.
Yeah.
It's the pulling that's the issue.
Yeah.
Would you use a harness? Do you use a harness at any point?
We use harnesses when we're doing bite work.
Yeah.
The dog to pull into,
Yeah.
of course. I would use a harness to build the frustration through play.
Yeah.
Where I actively want the dog to pull.
Yeah.
Where I want the dog to be as comfortable pulling as possible. I would use a harness if a dog had an injury.
Yeah.
Had dogs with sores around their necks,
Yeah.
or certain neck issues and things like that. It just means then really working sub-threshold for a longer period of time, and then you just go into the force-free model, and that's fine. Might take longer, whatever it may be. Very rarely use harnesses for like severe lead pulling and things like that. You know, like you said earlier, you're not going to stick a big bully on a harness where he's going to pull Brenda across that road. And I think we have a moral obligation as dog trainers to enable owners to be safe.
Yeah, exactly that.
And I think a tool should be judged on. Often we use tools in order to get the dog. So I'll talk about the e-collar really quickly. Very rarely do we use an e-collar to address the behavior directly.
Yeah.
The e-collar is used and able to enable the dog to live a more fulfilled life, which will address the behavioral issue from the bottom up, as we alluded to earlier, right?
Yeah.
So if I've got a big dog, or even a small dog like a Dachshund, that is just so pissed off, so frustrated, and can't do dog things, utilizing an e-collar so he can safely be off a lead and live a much more fulfilling life, I think is an ethical way to use that tool, because it enables that dog.
Yeah.
People think because we're using some sort of tool that we're just going to squash the dog's behavior and that's the only use for it. often don't understand the use of the tool.
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? It's people only see as well. This is the thing with social media as well. You only see a 60-second clip.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the full backstory behind why that dog is. You don't know whether that dog's been aggressive, has done this, has done that. You don't know what else is happening. Like you said there about maybe the dog's got, I don't know, maybe the dog's been in a harness and they've got sores. So we're going to have to put them on a slip lead or a collar or something like that. You only see a 60-second clip. And then you also don't see, as well, as I suppose is, as a dog trainer, you will see a lot of bad cases sometimes. You'll see people have been bitten and this, that and the other, and that does accumulate in us, I suppose, as dog trainers. So we're always thinking worst case scenario. Sometimes we're always thinking what could happen. We see things a little bit clearer than what the owner does as to what could happen, and taking preventative steps to make life easier for the dog and for you.
Yeah, we can, without giving us superpowers, we can almost see into the future a little bit of where things may go, right? And we can recommend certain routes to go down in terms of training to avoid problems. And then people go, well, my dog isn't that bad yet.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, but 2 months' time, this is going to be really fucking bad. Like when we talked about, and you'll get this a lot, you will get a 5-6-month-old Dachshund that has some little bits and bobs that the owner thinks he just needs tidying up.
Yeah.
But in 3 months' time, you know that dog's going to be the fucking devil when he matures and the testosterone comes through, and you see that all the time that they go from little bits here and there to like fucking mental, and it hits them out of nowhere. As dog trainers, we can see that brewing, and we can start saying, right, this dog needs a little bit more structure. There needs to be consequences for certain things. We need to start thinking
100%.
About the biological fulfillment, etc., etc. And they're like, yeah, no, he's only got a couple of things I need to work on.
Well,
but 3 months' time, these are going to be big things you need to work on. And if we just do the things that we're talking about now, you're going to avoid so many problems, and then they just fucking ignore
I had
us.
a one-to-one client, actually, an in-person client, not that long ago, only a month or two ago. Or we'd had a few sessions together. It's exactly the same thing. Puppy Dachshund, got him, so cute, cuddly puppy. And then I went round one day, and he was basically jumping up on the back of the sofa and barking at the school kids walking past.
Yeah.
And the owner found it funny, found it very funny.
That's fucking adorable at that point, right?
Yeah, because it's a squeaky little barky, yappy kind of thing. And I was very quickly trying to explain to him that, that spills out. That will very quickly spill out from barking at the kids out of the window to barking at the kids out on a walk to barking at everything out on a walk. It very quickly spills.
And that behaviour of barking at the kid comes, he says, fucking go away, the kid goes away.
Yep.
Now, every time the dog does that, it builds the history of reinforcement, like a little behavioural bank account, we call it, that gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, when you take a dog and you free shape a behaviour, which is essentially kind of what's happening there, when you take a dog and then you put it in a situation where the old behaviour no longer works, they will then trial a different behaviour.
Yeah.
And the bark doesn't work, what might the dog do to send the kid away? Snap and bite. Yeah. So just by allowing that little puppy to bark and be cute and sending all those kids away builds that history of reinforcement. And then we go on a street and the dog's on the lead and the kid comes along and the barking doesn't work.
Something else
Is going to happen.
That.
I'm going to try something else.
Yeah.
And then a snap is always going to work because the kid's going to go, oh, shit, what just happened then? And then very quickly that cute little puppy has just been allowed to be aggressive without us really realising, right?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. Yeah, and I think when you're in the moment, as that's not... And I'm very keen to I always say to owners, I don't want to put the blame on the owners too much, because I always say to people, when you're in the moment, I think when you have a problem behaviour, it's very quick to, A, overlook it, and B, get stuck in that moment. So you get stuck focusing on one thing. So you get stuck focusing on, I don't know, your puppy's toilet training, that you're missing everything else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always try and make sure that I don't blame everybody for it, although sometimes the owners do don't help.
I think at the same time there's a lot of shitty information out there as well, and
that's the thing.
Sometimes I get a little bit of smoke for giving certain dog trainers a bit of stick, but when they're big dog trainers with followers of millions and millions and they're giving out shitty advice, or you're writing shitty books that each one of our clients has read and it's completely fucked things up and created a little monster, then I feel like we have almost an obligation to say, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Because it's not, otherwise the only other person to blame is the everyday dog owner. Yeah. They don't know any better.
No, yeah, exactly. You don't know
the
what you
people
don't
with
know.
millions of pounds in their bank accounts that are promoting things on TV shows and books and online courses that are selling absolute drivel that needs to kind of be held accountable.
Yeah.
Right, Jack, we'll wrap it up there. I have a feeling this will be a very successful podcast.
Hope so.
Really enjoyed that. Thank you very much for coming down.
For inviting me. I've loved it.
And we might get an episode 2 at some point.
Yeah,
because I think we could talk about Dachshunds all day, right?
Everyone would love us to talk about Dachshunds all day.
Exactly. Thanks very much.
No, cheers for having me.